Right, Mary? Good morning. Unmute.
Yes.
Yeah, so this
Yeah,
is
Trey has always served at the Guam Homeland Security with GVB to represent private sector in tourism. So yeah, we've had a lot of experience with banana typhoons and regular typhoons, but in the new PCOR system.
Yeah, so when did that change? Just refresh our memory because it kind of seemed like the old way. God, and this is going to turn into old people complaining about new things.
Get off my lawn,
Yay, stupid kids. But yeah, it kind of seems like the old way was better, at least more accurate.
Yeah, I want to say the PCOR changes that took place right around between the Camacho and Cabo administration, but I think the Camacho administration, that's when it took.
And what was the thinking? Was it just to kind of align with what the military's condition of readiness and their whole labeling system was?
Yeah, it was definitely the military, but also with National Weather Service because of the type of people were getting confused between storms and typhoons.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So in the types of condition of readiness. And so the military had done that. And so we needed to move towards that. But there are two variants of it because of storms versus typhoons.
And Mary, I got to ask, I mean, it's probably a very, very unique kind of crisis planning if you specifically like if you work in a hotel, right, that has like many different restaurants within it, when you've got a typhoon, because now you want to offer all these amenities like perhaps a water slide park and like things for the kids to do and everything, but under a typhoon condition now you've got probably hundreds of visitors and guests who are going to need to eat at some point, who are going to need restroom facilities at some point, and and maybe linen services and like doing everything like that. So that's all.
Yeah, we have specific protocols, but the PCOR readiness portion is really more about timing of approach, right? So that's where the difference is. Yeah. And so it was always it's timing of approach. So that's what the hotels and the restaurants and everybody else is used to when it comes to operations. Is it 72 hours away, 48, 24 hours?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think I don't know. It just seems like this event that happened over the weekend with the weather, it almost seems like back in the day we wouldn't even blip the radar. We've just been like, oh, it's rainy season, guys. Get your umbrella.
And ironically, back then, none of us had the access to data that we do now.
Yeah.
Where you can see animated
It's
charts,
almost like the era of oversharing, Yeah. It's like because we have all this media and all these platforms to get this information out, we get it out, right? And it just... I think the long-term effect of it is that maybe people don't take these cores as seriously as they should because, like, for example, my mom, we grew up in the typhoon condition, whatever. Over the weekend, she's like, is there a typhoon coming tomorrow? Because, they don't know what is core 3, and they just hear a core, and they think automatically typhoon, right? So maybe it's just generational.
It's generation, but you have to remember the reason why we have really started to strengthen that type of communication is with what typhoon was it, where it was supposed to just be a banana typhoon and then it became a major storm. I was off island. I was still living in Oregon at the time.
I think that was Omar, right?
No, it's the one in 2000.
A dolphin or
99.
Oh, Pong Songhua.
It was Pong Songhua.
Yeah.
And so after that, they decided to really create that difference between tropical storm and typhoon, I believe, because they had indicated it's going to be a banana typhoon, banana storm, and it wasn't.
Right. So I guess
that's where I think the attitudes shifted towards more of a structured program.
Right. Yeah. And I guess it is that old cliche. What is it? Out of an abundance of caution. Overabundance or whatever. Right. 6:57. Mary, I know that was a little off topic, but given your history with the OHS and Emergency Command, really value your insight. But we're here to talk about the Air V&V, which is kicked off. I think Monday.
Yes, Monday, the Guam Visitors Bureau had announced it, and so it's exciting because we've been working on it for several months now, and it has been one of those things that we've been discussing at the reopening task force. So it's good to see that we were able to get all of the partners in to get this in a very controlled environment, so that it really is authorized by public health with the protocols, as well as the selection of the vendors, so that we could really have a really good program that GVB can market for Guam.
Mm. Also, as an interesting footnote, I know, Mary, when Nestor Lecanto interviewed former Governor Gutierrez yesterday, he was very animated and excited about the fact that he goes, can you also just mention that the term Air V&V Guam has now been copyrighted? So we own that, right?
Well, he coined it through the Guam Visitors Bureau, and so I know that they put a logo to it, and they've copyrighted it. So it's important that we use it for branding purposes, but also that markets get to know Guam as Air V&V, which is vacation and vaccination. So that's really important with the rollout, because even that's while we're in quarantine, but there is a future for medical tourism, right? As we continue to have parity with other regions around us to get vaccines to people who don't have access to them. Or maybe even if they have access, it might be some time before they are authorized to receive it. So Guam can serve in that way where you can come here for vacation in a secured and safe way, but then also get vaccinated so that you can go back to your home country at some point, and then maybe have a really great experience so you can come back to Guam. So it was really built with the concept of having parity, which is one of the global initiatives during this pandemic. But more importantly for Guam, it's to reopen tourism as a gateway into it, and getting a lot of our establishments ready to receive tourists. And so it was one of those steps in reopening.
Mm-hmm. How much direct input did you have in crafting this? Because I know you, and I know your strategy background. You've taught critical thinking at UOG, and developing young minds to come up with tactics and execute on plans, as proper business people should. But I want to ask, how, I guess weird is the right word, was it to craft a strategy like this? Because you can do you can do SOPs, and now you're trying to, and hospitality is in our DNA as Guamanians. We want to make people feel comfortable when they come over to the house, for a christening or for a funeral or for the village fiesta and everything like that. And we also want to welcome people who aren't from here to our shores and show them a good time and everything. But now trying to do this specific type of marketing, and like you said, offering health tourism, which is kind of a new thing for us. How was this putting this together?
Well, actually, even when I was with FHP Take Care, we always had medical tourism, right? So there were always needs on behalf of the tourists, whether it's concierge services at the hotel, or they need to go to an urgent care center at a clinic or at the hospital. So we've always had to coordinate care within the hotels. And so that's not a new thing. But you have to remember, last year we provided quarantine services for the Roosevelt.
Right.
And so I was the administrator on that contract, and we worked with 12 hotels. And so those 12 hotels already had experience in dealing with a COVID-specific quarantine protocol. And so that's the second reason this was, something that public health was comfortable with, because we had already gone through and approved the quarantine protocols for Roosevelt. And so we just adopted that and adjusted it for tourists, and then also for the adjusted time frame of only a 6-day quarantine, and being allowed to have their vaccine immediately after their initial stay on day one, and getting tested prior to getting vaccinated to make sure it's safe. So we had the protocols in place anyway for the Roosevelt, and we've always had medical tourism in place within the hotels.
Okay.
And then it's also a process within the hotels regarding any kind of emergency, right? Or whether it's pandemic or other emergencies, to have protocols in place. So writing this wasn't that different from what we normally do. It was just introducing it to public health so they're comfortable and reassured that we've taken into consideration not just guest safety, but also employee safety and ensuring that we don't have any transmission with the community. And so all of that put together, made, of course, the governor and her team and public health comfortable. And that's why we had the surgeon cell there, the PAG, as well as public health, all there to review it and approve it.
So now I could actually, I think it's more than fair to say that this actually really, really bodes well for you and your strategic team, because now GVB can use that, as you just said, very eloquently so, and say, we've got a pedigree here on Guam of doing this kind of thing. This isn't a new thing. We've got experience and we've got expertise in doing this, so we can confidently say that the plans that we've now laid out, this is definitely a selling point because we know what we're doing. This isn't like, a 1.0 document and everything like that. We can bring visitors here, treat them right, show them a good time, and also, make sure that their health is taken care of. That's a great selling point.
So we built that confidence as well as trust with the international community, as with all the coverage that we had previously. But now it's about building trust with our community as well, because when we say we're reopening to tourists, we need to make sure our local community, our local residents, and also the military, because they do stay in the hotels, that they are comfortable with understanding that at any time, whether it's COVID or any other type of virus or pandemic, that we have protocols in place regardless if we're in a pandemic or not. We do have protocols. And so this is just part of that process in operations. But we've labeled it Air V&V, branding it, and it is a package. And so those package partners are all in place to provide those services. And so we feel very confident that this is a great program to reignite our tourism industry with.
Mm-hmm. Now, how about for your I want to say, this is wonderful for the executive level, the big C-level thinkers and, and the managerial staff and everything. But let's say maybe for your average bellhop who, loves working in Guam hotels and, loves exhibiting the Hafaday spirit, maybe the wait staff at like one of the hotels and the restaurants here, or the, just anybody who's doing, like line entry work in the hotels. What should they know in summary about this and what it means for what it's going to be for their professions going forward?
Well, I think a lot of the employees who have continued to work in the industry have been wanting to move towards that. But before we could go there, one of the initiatives GVB and GHRA and the Reopening Task Force had was to increase vaccinations, inoculations at the work site. And so that's why we've held 9 vaccine clinics within the hotel. And we have increased vaccinations from about 30% with the local community vaccines by doing worksite vaccines at the Hyatt with AMC and GRMC and the Guam Army National Guard. We are over 80%. So within the hotel base, we've been at herd immunity at over 80% within those hotels. So I think that the employees themselves, although some of them aren't at 100%, we've been working towards building the vaccine base, vaccinated employee base, so that everybody is comfortable knowing that, there's always a chance, but as long as we do everything we can to protect our employees and reduce transmission and introduce safe procedures. So you'll see that once they come in and they're not vaccinated, they have a different process of entry into the hotel during quarantine. So keep in mind, this SOP is only during quarantine in these current protocols. And so we've really taken into consideration all of the guidelines that's in place with the executive order. And so it would just be a couple minor adjustments once we go out of quarantine and we can really open up tourism. But we've really done a lot to get the employees ready. And so part of that is education, communication, but more importantly with this, especially with this virus, it was about getting vaccinated.
I was going to say, I love how you use the terms education and communication, because I remember I was speaking with you recently, offline, and it was about 1.5 years ago that you gave, what to me was a very landmark presentation at the Loti Hotel to the GHRA membership. And that's when you were one of the first people who really told the membership, okay, guys, this is what it's going to be. It's not if this virus comes here, it's when. And it's going to get bad, and it's going to get bad for a little while. Things are going to be very, very tough, and it's going to be very, very scary. You have never sugar-coated conditions, or your forecasts have never been too melodramatic or like understated to your membership and everything. And I think by that merit, everybody's always stayed in the loop and they've stayed prepared.
Right. Well, that's our job, is to provide that resource in between government for our members, and then to also educate them and give them the tools that they need in order to be successful and to continue to be connected to what's happening in the community. And so that's why we're very excited. We partnered with 8 different organizations this Thursday, tomorrow, from 8 a.m. to 12 noon. We have this economic forum. And this economic forum we've invited, the governor to do welcoming remarks, as well as we have, the public health, Guam Visitors Bureau, the airport, Guam DOL, GITA. They're all coming in. We also have the PAG, and we invited the Surgeon Cell, and they'll be providing updates on our reopening initiatives and some of the questions I know a lot of people have had regarding some of the specifics with regards to our quarantine protocols and our reopening dates, but also what it was next. We have vaccine tourism, tell me about it, but what's next after that? And how do we get other businesses online and other optional tours and other parts of the economy online? And so it is really about getting our reopening strategy out there, communicate it, and get questions on how do we start moving towards more flights come October. Anything after the dates where we've already heard all the airlines have shifted. And so we had to get vaccine tourism open with Air V&V to get airlines to even want to start flying to Guam. And so GBB and airport will be providing that update tomorrow on which airlines have already started those discussions.
And it's interesting, like me holding this like 7-page document, that now has been like codified as a standard operating procedure, because us having covered you and you being very forthright, but with all the work that you and your colleagues have put into and everything, there's a lot of moving parts to this thing, and like so much work went into just crafting this thing for so many people. So and you took the words right out of my mouth. I'm assuming at your economic forum, this is going to be like one of the big center points of that presentation tomorrow, if not the one.
Yeah, reopening is first, and then we're going to be sharing vaccine tourism. So really, Nadine and her team at GVB has, they've done a really great job getting everybody together and really getting this going, because it has been challenging, right, in working within the confines that we have to get these discussions going and then adopted. And that's why it took us a couple of months to really get this out there. And I know that we've been promoting that vaccine tourism as a possibility, but you have to remember the governor had to ask, whether or not we can even do this. The Guam Chamber of Commerce has been working with GHRA and GBB in explaining how many AmChams, how many chambers of commerce throughout Asia, how many people are interested in coming to Guam, chartering flights. Yes, there are a lot of moving parts, and not anything happens very fast, but we were also under strict guidelines, of course, with the reopening as well, right? And so our opening date moved twice, and so it's allowed us time to get this in. And so we're very excited that the timing is right for this now, and we've put everything in place.
Well, just final question, Mary, because I know we got to let you go, but and I got to ask you to be honest with this. Would you consider this SOP to be conservative, pragmatic, or aggressive as far as reopening tourism, reintroducing, our main source of revenue, as far as a business strategy?
Oh, no, it's pragmatic, because like I said, we've already done this before. We know how this operates, and it's fluid too, right? We can always make adjustments as we continue to deal with this. And this is not just, and trust me, this is not the only SOP. The hotels have to take that portion of their SOP and further break it out. The Japan Guam Travel Association, who's our transportation partner, they have additional SOPs to support this, and documents that they have to follow their own detailed protocols to ensure that they're really implementing what it is that we say they are doing. And then the same thing with AMC and GRMC. We've asked them to flesh it out even further on how exactly are they going to provide that service within room and protect their employees as well, communicate to the guests where they have to go, or when they receive their PCR vaccine test, their departure test as well, and how do they get their documentation prior to departure. So every part of that SOP is broken out into additional SOPs, so everybody is all tied in. And so it is a lot of moving parts and a lot of different organizations working together. Mm-hmm. But between GVB and GHRA, we had to do this to really give the assurances with the government while we're still in quarantine, to allow additional hotels to provide quarantine facilities. Right?
Yeah, we got to say, congratulations and well done, because I know there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into this. And as you said, a living document, and subject to change as things change, as they Mary, probably will. I
wanted to ask, because we did get a comment, and one thing I didn't hear you talk about was this whole Afghan issue. And I know that we had talked to Vera Tapasnia with the military, what is it called now? Community Defense. They changed the name of her title. Anyway,
liaison, right?
Something. But she was basically saying that the governor has formed a task force, and they've met a few times on this issue. But I know that we've talked about it a little bit, but GHRA, any discussion on this at all?
We've had some discussions. I've spoken to Vera directly as well as other partners, and we have not. I know I've spoken to GBB as well on how we would stand up for this if in case we are asked. Yeah. I know the way the federal program usually works. They would have to go through all of that, but at the same time also find the funding and then award it, right? So similar to the Roosevelt, where if they needed lodging space, then they would contact us, or additional services, then they would contact us. Yeah. They're not at that stage at this point. It's still in discussion and planning mode, and whether or not Guam would even be chosen. So they're still in discussion. Yeah. Nothing has been really discussed with me with regards to activating any kind of service, or even considering whether or not the refugees stay in the hotel versus another place, or is it first, the support team that comes here instead and stays in the hotels. We have 16 hotels that are contracted with the federal government. So we do have 16 hotels, but currently we have very active deployment right now going on here on Guam through August. And with Air V&V, we have a lot of things going on. So we are very busy. So I have not received that call to actively engage in that task force as of yet with regards to providing lodging services. But they know that Guam, and especially GHRA, with all of our member hotels, have always been very supportive of all of the different programs that we've had to implement quickly, right? Whether it's Roosevelt or now Air V&V or anything else, especially with this deployment. We did meet with our federal partners with the military in order to get ready for this deployment that's taking place with Cope North too. So we've always been able to stand up and provide services. The question is for how long and how much, and who's going to be in charge of these things.
Right, yeah. I mean, it just kind of seems like the whole, even entertaining this is going to rain on our Airbnb and tourism reopening parade, right?
Yeah, it's a managing resources, right? And so just to give you an example, out of the 10 hotels that are in Airbnb, 2 of them are not available until September because of all of the military activity. And so even if Airbnb, even if tourists choose to want to stay in those hotels, those packages aren't available until September for a couple of hotels because their bookings are so high. And also they have other priorities, right, with the guests that are in-house. They have contracts in place. And so not every hotel will be able to participate. And we did offer it to every hotel. And only 10 did come back to us for the Airbnb program. And so, it's really up to the businesses on how much they want to provide that support and whether or not they're able to provide that support because they might be encumbered with contracts already.
Right. Okay. Well, it definitely doesn't sound like you guys are rushing into this thing at all. And we haven't.
Yeah, we again, that might come up tomorrow at that economic forum, which is 8 to 12 at Hyatt. And so that might be one of the questions, is how do you balance a reopening strategy with that, knowing that that's going to take several months to transition people between their original location to Guam as a holding place until they get to their final location. How do we ensure all of that, plus manage our military business as well as our tourism business?
And if I'm a tourist or an expat, I would be thinking about the security issues that come along with transporting tens of thousands of Afghan refugees to Guam. So yeah, it definitely seems like tourism toes will be stepped on if this thing goes through.
And you said it there too. It's not just lodging, it's transportation, it's supplies, it's getting all of that in. And I'll tell you, even during the Roosevelt, we had a lot of people come in from Okinawa, Alaska, to Hawaii just to support the mission on the military side. So it's a very big operation. And the military will also have to bring in people for that operation, because you're going to have to secure the hotels. You're going to have additional protocols. So there are a lot of details that still have to be worked out if in case we're going to be considered an option.
Yeah, Mary, real quick, again, I said this before, but before we let you go, I just got to ask you on a side note, right? Have you ever taken a class from Dr. Judy Guthertz when she was teaching?
No.
Okay, because I would like to say, I always said that Dr. J, as we affectionately called her, had the best stories from her time when she was, police chief and senator and everything when she lectured. I would love to sit in on one of your lectures in a business class, maybe like 2 years from now, and you're like, okay, kids, let me tell you what I did in 2020 and 2021.
Well, every time she comes on, it's like a business.
Yeah, I got some stories I could tell you about the negotiation process and crisis management. So
thank you, Mary.
Good job again.
Yep. Thanks, you guys. And again, please show up. Economic Forum, Hyatt Regency Guam, 8 to 12. We have both sessions open with face-to-face as well as live Zoom.
Thank you. Break a leg.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good luck.
Bye. Take
Good
care.
morning. Right on. Hey, we'll take a quick break. We're coming back with Minority Leader Senator Chris Duenas next, right here on The Link. Good morning.
Our World War II survivors have endured more sacrifice